Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 145 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is a completely unique fish to Texas. It's absolutely beautiful, at least I think so. Other people might think it looks plain, but it has a really neat story. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, bam, the Devil's River Minnow. Now, the Devil's River Minnow, or scientific name Dionda diaboli, again that's Dionda diaboli, it is part of the family Cyprinidae. Now, Dionda used to, long time ago, used to be only one species. In the last 30 years or so, they really started getting split out in about 30 years ago. Devil's River Minnow was one of the first to be split out from the Dionda genus, or the big Dionda species. Now Dionda are they're really unique to the river systems they're found. And so Dionda is just a cool species, a cool genus in general, and I highly encourage you to go look at this genus. But let's talk about the Devil's River Minnow. The Devil's River Minnow is native to the southwest Texas area, specifically the Devil's River. Who would have thought? The Devil's River Minnow is found in the Devil's River. It is found in a few other rivers, San Felipe Creek. I believe most of these actually flow into the Devil's River or fairly close. It is probably found in northern Mexico, but the amount is unknown. I'm assuming that the abundance is pretty rare. Fish records from Mexico are, I don't want to say they're subject, but they're very sporadic, especially along the border area. In terms of where you can find this, you'll really find this in spring-fed streams and tributaries. But these fish aren't at the spring heads. The fish most often occur where the spring flow enters into the river system. So you have your spring flow and it's coming down, and when it hits like a mainstream, that's where you're going to really find a lot of this. And that seems to be true of a lot of the Dionda species. They're not necessarily at the spring heads, they're where the spring waters enter into the stream. With a few exceptions, I believe the Nueces round-nosed minnow, the Guadalupe round-nosed minnow is more specific to spring heads, but don't quote me on that. But I believe some of them are much more focused on spring heads. But it does prefer gravel to cobble substrates with usually some sort of macrophytes or aquatic vegetation. Now, talking about where this fish is from, you know, obviously the Devil's River, but the best example I can give, not the best example, is if you've never been to the Devil's River, I highly encourage you to go. Look at this place. This is Devil's River State Park in Texas. Absolutely beautiful river. Here's another picture from a cliffside looking at it. The Devil's River is considered one of the most pristine river systems in the country, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's full of completely unique species that are found nowhere else in the world. Remember, that would be the term endemic. These endemic species found nowhere else, including a unique species of largemouth bass, the Devil's River largemouth bass. It's got, I believe, 2 unique sucker fish to the river. Just a absolutely beautiful and completely unique river system. And come on, why would you not want to go on vacation and see a river like this? Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, it is a small fish. You're talking about 2.5 to 5.5 centimeters. So you're talking about 1 to 2 inches. Not large at all. Very small. As you can see here, the scales are fairly darkly outlined, and it's kind of hard to notice, but one of the distinguishing characteristics of the genus Dionda is they'll have a lateral stripe. It's very faint on this specimen. You can see it on other Dionda specimens. Let me show you. So you can see here on this Dionda, you see this black stripe, and what's not unique to Dionda, but you notice the stripe actually continues through the head. It's in the eye and extends to the snout. That's a very key characteristic, extending throughout the body, through the eye to the snout. It does have a caudal spot. What's really pretty about this fish is during breeding, the males get a much more brassy, blue-green coloration, yellow to orange on the fins. This is not a good picture. I found a picture that is absolutely tiny, but you can see if you look closely, maybe pause the video and zoom in if you're on your phone, you can see that the caudal fin gets really orange and the pectoral fins get a little bit yellow. Really, really beautiful. Unfortunately, there is just not many pictures of this fish. Most of the time, however, you are going to find them like this, with this herringbone pattern, with all the melanophores outlining the cells. Now, something else that's unique about Dionda is its intestines, actually. So most minnows in the United States, specifically Texas, have one of two sort of intestine patterns. There's some minnows that the intestine is actually wound spirally around the swim bladder. That's pretty cool. And then you basically have two others. Most of your minnows are going to have this kind of larger S-shaped intestine because they're eating insects and things like this. Well, Dionda actually has a very, very coiled intestine done in like concentric rings. It's really bizarre. It just circles and circles and circles and circles. And what's actually kind of neat is that it actually has a black peritoneum, which would be sort of like the flesh of the stomach. And if you flip a Dionda over and you look really closely, you can actually see that it looks really dark. And if you kind of pull, do not kill the fish, please, but if you kind of pull the skin flat, you can actually see those coiled intestines. Just a really bizarre thing to think about it. If you've ever flipped over a tadpole, it has very similar intestines to some of the tadpole species. Now, why would it have that sort of intestine shape? Well, that is because this fish is an algae feeder. It's scraping algae off the bottom. It gets some aquatic insects from that, but it is primarily an algae, which plant animals and algae eaters usually have a much larger intestine or longer intestine to allow for more time for digestion. I'm sorry, it kind of looks like my recording is skipping a little bit. I hope it doesn't bother you too much. Hopefully it kind of resolves itself out. Now, this fish is endangered, as are a lot of fish in the Devil's River. I found a quote from somewhere that said the Devil's River minnow has, in about 50 years, gone from one of the most abundant fish in southern Texas to one of the rarest fish in the world. And that's completely true. And that is because this fish depends on very clean, constantly flowing spring water in order to survive. But because of construction, agricultural industries, the supply of water has been dramatically reduced. Another thing that has happened is agricultural runoff with pesticides or herbicides is responsible for a lot of the pollutants that could be found in this particular minnow's habitat. And many Dionda species cannot tolerate any pollutants at all. They are very, very susceptible to pollution. So that's not really a good thing. The last thing that goes into it would be the introduction of invasive suckermouth catfish. Suckermouth catfish, or the armored catfish from South America, they are also algae eaters. They're just quite a bit better and quite a bit larger than any of the Diondra species. Suckermouth catfish pose a huge threat to Diondra across the entire state of Texas. Now, there is a recovery plan between Texas Parks and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the city of Del Rio, and numerous private landowners to try and fix the habitat that this fish is found in. And it does seem to be helping quite a bit, actually. The Devil's River is one of the most protected rivers of the state of Texas, and there's a lot of effort going into recovery patterns. However, agricultural practices are still going on. Now, I grew up on a farm and ranch. I understand agricultural practices, and people have to make a living, which is one of the biggest conundrums of my field, is trying to create this delicate, and I mean this supremely delicate, balance of agricultural practices and, you know, domestication of the wild while trying to preserve the natural resources of the world. And it does pose a problem, especially because out there in West Texas there's very little water. You know, you are in a desert, and people have to get their water from wells, and the wells, spring water is coming from groundwater resources, and so wells are what are using, and that's why the spring flow has dramatically decreased in the Devil's River. There is a lot of work, like I said, working on this, getting people, you know, better. And it is not like agricultural people, a lot of them want to see the rivers dry up or any sort of fish die off. They're just doing what they can to make a living. So it is a very delicate balance. I have high hopes for this fish. I believe it is going to do excessively well in the future, especially once this drought in Texas kind of relieves itself. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If I don't, please be safe. Have a great day. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It would help a ton. I am loving this. We are getting so close to that 150 Fish Friday. I am already working on that video. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope it answers a lot of questions. But regardless, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.